Over here in Rattlesnake and Ayers Bay, this whole shoreline up in here, man, you got lots of great mud that's in here. You've got some great structure of shale in here. You've grass that's scattered along that area as well. You've got the cut that goes in between here and Ayers Island, and go back on the shoreline this way. Just work all this area up and down on both sides of that. Take your time with it. Uh, Again, our tides have kind of been all over the place. Even we've gotten past that big front that we had a week ago, and everything's kind of warmed back up now, which feels much better. The waters have gotten back up into the 60s with the sunshine that we've had on it. Have to deal with a bunch of fog here the last few days, but that's just kind of part of it, and this comes with the territory. So one of the things that you can do to just make sure that you travel safely wherever you're trying to get to fish in these areas. Just take your time. There's no rush. Those fish will be there for you. But anyway, we've been working these areas over mud and scattered shale and drops and edges all up and down the shoreline on both sides of that cut on the backside of the ICW. Biggest baits that we've been using, or the best baits that we've been using that's been the most productive for us, have been the burner shads in 2 or 3, 4 different flavors. The purple rain, white ice has been really good. Firecracker has been good. Some of this water has been super clear because just cooler air and cooler water, everything settles down into it, so it really makes that water almost just gin clear. So we've been using a little bit more translucent bait with a lot of flake that's in those. Those baits have been pretty solid for us. Also the Twisted Tea, also in the knock and tail, the heavy metal has been good, and the watermelon red, which is a 3 1/4 inch bait. Now, one thing that you need to take in consideration, talked about this before, said it before, mentioned it before, what you want to be able to do now. We're fixing to be on a full moon. So these next few days are going to be pretty critical for you to make sure that you downsize your baits. Why? Is because fish are predominantly night feeders. So they're going to be main food for them is going to be at nighttime, working around those areas. So as you progress into the morning hours, as that moon begins to set, your bite will just gradually taper off. And so if you're not presenting them something a little bit smaller, because more than likely they're going to be not as apt to want to eat since they've been at it most of the night off and on. So you up your chances of catching these fish if you will throw the smaller baits, smaller profile baits like the burner shad, like the Little John, like the knock and tail lures that are the smaller size, marker 54 jerk shrimps, all great baits to throw, especially right now. Make sure that you're locating bait. There's not a tremendous amount of bait that's in these systems at the moment. Again, that cold air that we had, the big front that we had a week ago, really pushed a lot of this bait that was remaining out deeper water. Some of it's starting to come back since the water has come back up, has warmed back up, but it is not as prevalent as it has been. So make sure that you are locating a little bit of bait, even if it's just the presence of bait. As long as you see something like that, you're going to have yourself or give yourself an opportunity to locate and find some fish. Again, the majors and minors have been very key for us this past week, really fishing in and around those time frames. That'll be key, especially with the full moon coming in. So your time frames that you really want to target are going to be early mornings and then late evenings. So, a couple hours before that moon begins to rise, and try to fish it, as late as you can, as far as, 9, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, and just let the bite kind of take care of itself, and it'll dictate to you what the bite is doing. Back here in Allen's Bite area, all along the ranch house shoreline, this area all the way down to where their canal that goes back into where their little harbor is there at the ranch house, and even on the other side of it to Blind Pass, this whole shoreline all through this area here, all the way back behind Mud Island. Work these areas here. They got this type of structure this time of year that we really want to use and be around, and it works on this whole backside all the way around. This is where basically your super flats begins and goes all the way around to the point of the Lydia Ann Channel. You've got different opportunities up and down this shoreline. Again, there's tremendous amount of grass that's in there. You've got scattered mud in areas. You've got great shale in areas. And the one thing that has been in here is we've had some decent amount of bait that's been working in here even since the freeze or the colder air that we had last week over Christmas. There's some bait that has showed back up in these areas, and there's some fish that are with them. So when you're paying attention to what your water levels are doing and where they're at, there's still, we've only had maybe a couple of days over the last few days where the water really dropped out. That has not been the case the last couple of days. Is that water level still staying in there? We're still having a decent amount of water that allows other areas to be opened up for you. You get up on the back side, this little flat here on the other side of mud, and all this little slough area that comes here, that first little cut through that goes to the Aransas Bay side. All this area in here gives you those opportunities to find fish and locate fish in these areas. We've been locating red in here. We've been finding some decent trout, not tremendous trout, but there's 15s to 19s that are scattered in some of these areas. You just have to work them. One of the things that has been working really well for us over the past week, and that's going to be your Miradines or your Soft Dines XLs in the regular size have all been really good. The knock and tail lures and assortment of colors have been good. The down south primarily in the burner shads and the flavors that I mentioned earlier. And then a few of the original sizes. Chicken of the Sea has been pretty good. White ice in the original size as well. We've gotten to eat a little bit of those. But if you're the fan of the corkies, fat boys, floaters, sinkers, the originals, throw them. That's been key for us over the past week. Now again, what I mentioned in the last little video there, we've got the full moon that's going to be on top of us. So might be a little bit bigger profile than what you want to present to them. Can you try it? Will they possibly eat it? Maybe. You won't know until you throw. But the one thing that you can do is make sure that you have that variety of a smaller profile bait. That's why the soft dines have been pretty good, and it would be one of the baits that you would probably want to use in this upcoming week around that full moon. Just make sure, again, locating bait, make sure that you got some good structure around you, make sure that you incorporate that major and minor in these areas here, and you'll locate fish. St. Charles Bay. St. Charles is one of the areas, estuaries, this time of year in the winter months that becomes really good. It starts to light up really well for you. If you fished it very much, or not even a tremendous amount, but you'll know that most of the shell is in the front half of the bay system. As you work your way back toward the back, that's where you get more of your mud and your grass, a little bit of clump shell here and there. But those areas are areas of emphasis that you really want to fish. All this here, that's just straight across from where the boat ramp is. That whole area all the way around to Egg Point, all the way down to Boy Scout Camp, Little Devil Bayou, Big and Little Sharp, Cavasso Creek, all those areas, even all the way to the back there where you got the back lake mouths that come in back there that go across the road on the other side. Those are all great areas to wade. And the great thing about it is the water temps are such that you don't have to concern yourself too much with alligators being back in those. They just don't want to be in that cold water, being reptiles, and all they want to be as warm as they possibly can be. But it's always make precaution or be cautionary back in those areas that you know that they can be. But that said, those areas are holding redfish, they're holding trout, some scattered flounder, some black drum in these areas. The primary things that we've been throwing and working in these is over that mud, and some of that mud gets kind of mushy, so be aware of that if you're going to jump out and wade it. You can drift it if you want to, but wading gives you a little bit better option as far as how thorough that you work those areas. And this time of year, when your bites can be short and not very prolonged from time to time, that you really want to be thorough in an area that you're working with those baits. So again, the down south burner shads have been really good for us in a little bit darker and a little bit more translucent, like the firecracker or the mud minnow. Supernatural in that as far as the translucent bait. And of course, the chicken of the sea, purple rain have all been really good in those particular colors. It just depends on what your water clarity is. So if it's been kind of beat up with wind or rough water or whatever, you're going to probably want to throw something a little bit darker, like a color X or something to that effect. In the knock and tails, the greenbacks and the heavy metal have been real good. The watermelon red in that as well has been pretty solid in this area. Mirror lure Little Johns have been good. Watermelon red in that, or the kitchen sink, or red and gold glitter, depending on, again, if your water clarity is clear enough to throw those particular flavors. Those are great baits to go to, especially with the full moon that's coming. like I say here, it'll be on us here in a day or two. So make sure that you take that in consideration with your bait choice and selection of what you're going to do in color wise and size wise. Again, if you're dead on wanting to throw the corkies, then throw them. Just work them the best that you can. But again, if your production on those is not where you think it ought to be, just make sure you downsize. Again, the soft dine is really good. The soft dine XL, just a little bit bigger profile. It could be right on the edge of where those fish may be wanting that size in there. Get down in Cavasso and work both sides of that creek back in there. That can be really good at times. There's been scattered fish up and down that. And there's been a decent amount of bait working back down in there. It's a little bit warmer. And that's a great thing about mud this time of year. Is that's where you want to primarily be over is mud. So it's going to hold heat for you. Locate these areas. If you know this, if you fished these areas back in here in St. Charles before, then that's what you want to be able to do and be over. Pay attention to what your winds are doing and what your window weather are coming up. Watch over those. And then again, majors and minors have been key for everything that we've been doing for the past week.